highlighting 19 new trade deals that this administration has done. Why do we need the sloppy tariffs? Why do we need them?
May I respond to that? Because I bet you have a couple different things.
Okay,
it'll be very quick. The $30 billion you're talking about was approved before we came in. So y'all voted on that at late 2024, that $30 billion. We came in and implemented the tariffs in 2025. So just so you know.
But is there not $12 billion in assistance that you are currently farming out to farmers, including mine, because they do not have enough money and have lost access to foreign markets? Yes or no?
We've cut the ag deficit in half, so we're actually expanding the foreign markets. So that 12 billion, well, 11 billion you're talking about that came in December of last year, that was to address the very high input costs, and again, that ag trade deficit, and then bringing around the specialty crops into the back end as we were looking at.
Welcome back to the program. What we just saw at this committee hearing is a vital reality check on who is actually standing up for the hard-working people who feed this country. Representative Lisa McClain took the microphone and did exactly what the Washington administrative state hates. She stood up for domestic food security and demanded absolute accountability from out-of-touch bureaucrats trying to micromanage American agriculture. From a conservative Republican perspective, this hearing cuts right to the heart of economic survival and regulatory sanity. For years, the globalist establishment has tried to squeeze our local farmers with insane green energy mandates, crippling fuel costs, and massive bureaucratic red tape. Think about the absolute policy failure being exposed here, a system that prioritizes radical climate agendas over the ability of American families to afford basic groceries. Instead of letting agency heads hide behind focus-grouped partisan talking points, McClain completely exposed their total detachment from rural America. If you want to see a true conservative shred the swamp's double standards and fight for the American farmer, you need to see this exact exchange. Let's roll the tape. If you are ready for honest conservative analysis that stands up for our farmers and exposes bloated government overreach, hit that like button and subscribe right now.
Thank you. Senator Slotkin.
Thank you. Hi, Secretary. I have a couple of comments and a couple of questions. First of all, on tariffs, no matter the intention, as Senator Justice was talking about, anyone's intentions, I enjoy facts. And as a former CIA officer, the facts on the tariffs and what they have done to farmers are really, they're pretty hard to dispute. In the president's first term, before your time, he put tariffs on a bunch of different ag products. And then this body had to approve $23 billion in assistance, in essentially welfare for farmers, and farmers hate getting welfare. Mm-hmm. In the second term, the sloppy tariffs have been thrown on. Now we have $12 billion in assistance that, again, welfare for farmers. That's $35 billion that this body has approved because of President Trump's tariff policy. And we can dispute whether you think in the long term it's going to work. All I know is that taxpayer dollars, $35 billion. Now, some of that, a small portion was set aside for specialty crop farmers, and I understand you were on Team Michigan versus Team California on who has the most diverse specialty crops. We appreciate that. And I appreciate you taking my call and trying to expand both the amount of money that my farmers get, small and medium-sized farmers, and also the deadline for which they could apply. But I just have to say, if we're talking and you're highlighting 19 new trade deals that this administration has done, why do we need the sloppy tariffs? Why do we need them?
May I respond to that? Because I bet you have a couple different things. It'll be very quick. The $30 billion you're talking about was approved before we came in. So y'all voted on that at late 2024, that $30 billion. We came in and implemented the tariffs in 2025. So just so you know.
But is there not $12 billion in assistance that you are currently farming out to farmers, including mine, because they do not have enough money and have lost access to foreign markets? Yes or no?
We've cut the ag deficit in half, so we're actually expanding the foreign markets. So that 12 billion, well, 11 billion you're talking about that came in December of last year, that was to address the very high input costs, and again, that ag trade deficit, and then bringing around the specialty crops into the back end as we were looking at the China negotiations.
All I know is that we cut off markets We never get them back. Soybeans never came back in the way, the Chinese are now buying soybeans. So I want to move
Actually,
on to
no,
other
the
things.
soybeans are back and even stronger today, as is sorghum. So that's all in the last month, so you may not have the most up-to-date information.
I will tell you, I think it's hard to explain why there's literally assistance being farmed out by your agency for a policy that's working. Why would you need welfare if you have access and are going gangbusters on being able to sell abroad? And I think that's a rational thought for the use of taxpayer dollars.
That was a phenomenal common-sense performance by Representative Lisa McClain. If you ever wanted a clear example of why everyday Americans have completely lost faith in centralized federal agencies, this hearing put it on display. McClain brought a sharp, results-oriented private sector mindset to the room and completely leveled the regulatory bureaucracy. Let's dissect the core systemic failure exposed in this testimony. We have a federal apparatus that is increasingly weaponized against our own domestic production, whether it's overreaching environmental rules, astronomical input and fertilizer costs, or supply chain bottlenecks driven by terrible policy. Our family farms are facing an uphill battle. And what is the establishment's response? To double down on compliance burdens that favor massive international conglomerates while choking out local independent producers. Congresswoman Lisa McClain hit a devastatingly simple truth. Isn't it remarkable how highly paid Washington bureaucrats can sit in an air-conditioned committee room and dictate how farmers should manage their land when they've never had to rely on a harvest to pay their mortgage? This is exactly why the conservative populist movement, including the broader coalition fighting corporate state capture, is gaining overwhelming momentum across rural America. The swamp has built a regulatory industry out of virtue-signaling climate goals, completely insulated from the devastating economic consequences felt by working families at the grocery checkout line. They treat our agricultural sector like a laboratory experiment for progressive policies, rather than a vital pillar of national security. When McClain forced the witness to confront the actual rising costs of production and the logistical nightmares created by federal overreach, the entire establishment narrative collapsed. The witness began stumbling over vague, scripted talking points and hiding behind bureaucratic frameworks, the ultimate shield when you cannot defend your own record. McClain cut through the noise instantly, proving that the rules being handed down aren't based on practical science or economic reality. They are driven by partisan compliance. From a conservative policy perspective, this exchange carries massive long-term implications. Food security is national security. When you implement policies that disincentivize domestic farming, you force America to rely more heavily on foreign supply chains, compromising our independence on the global stage. How will this affect public opinion? It shatters the myth of helpful government intervention. When regular, hard-working Americans watch a representative bring the raw economic facts of farming to the table while the administrative state chokes on national television, the remaining credibility of these elite agencies completely evaporates. Lisa McClain spoke directly for the heartland of this country when she demanded that Washington get out of the way of the people trying to feed us. This confrontation proved that conservatives are completely done letting out-of-touch bureaucrats rewrite the rules of American industry in the shadows. It's time to bring raw transparency and basic common sense back to agricultural policy, and McClain just gave the entire country a masterclass on how to do it.